My name is Curtis, and I'm about to embark on a 5-month trip on the road in a pandemic with my family and a dog. What's really important for us, number one, is to stay healthy. Number two is cell connectivity. I still work remotely. My daughters have to be participating in classes, their online classes, so making sure that we have good, strong signal to wherever we are is going to be key to the success of this trip. Stick around and check it out. The Weboost Drive RV system is a fairly simple system with only 3 main components. You know, I was kind of back and forth about getting this because I just wasn't sure how the heck I was going to get this installed in my Scamp without kind of doing some irreversible damage. Number one that we have, and this was my challenge, is the external antenna. This is the antenna that's going to pick up an existing cell signal. Now that's really key. There has to be a cell signal available for this system to work. So this antenna is mounted somewhere outside. It then sends the signal into the booster, the internal booster. This gets mounted inside the Scamp, and then it gets shared amongst your devices with this internal antenna. What I'm going to be talking through here today is how do we get this installed, connected to this, so we can have good, strong cell signal inside without causing all kinds of damage into the Scamp. So the first thing we're going to have to do is to figure out where we're going to put the internal booster. Now, I know a lot of people are putting it in cabinets or wall mounted, but I really wanted this thing to be tucked away close to a power source, whether it's 12 volt or the 120 in the Scamp, and a place that I can access easily, but still it's kind of out of the way. You know, I've got kids running around, dog running around. I don't want this thing to get damaged or get in the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it underneath the bench where the hot water tank is. There's plenty of room for me to mount it somewhere in there, and all the power is tucked under that bench as well. There's a plug right there that's available, so I'm going to plug this thing in there. So instead of screwing this mounting plate, so this is a mounting plate for the actual booster, I'm going to use heavy-duty Velcro. And this way, if for whatever reason, if the place that I pick is no good, or I want to move it at a later date, I can do so without having to deal with 4 holes in the future. First things first, let's get this cut to size. All right, and then I'm going to get the back piece. This is going to be the piece that gets installed inside under the sink, or under the bench. Great, that's good to go. So now let's go get it installed. So as you can see, you're right now inside that under bench area. I'm going to take this, I'm going to remove the adhesive, and you can see a really beautiful spot right here that this can go without being in the way of anybody else. So I'd say that looks pretty good. Here's my dog Frank. Hey, Frank. So that's there. Yes, there are people in there. So now with this, just do a little dry fit. Here, click, maybe. The Weboost is now attached to the Scamp without any screws. So probably the biggest challenge that I had in thinking about this is how and where to mount the external antenna. I really didn't want to put additional holes into the fiberglass. You know, once you put holes in it, right, they're there. You know, the fewer holes in this fiberglass shell, the better for me. So what I came up with was getting kind of like this telescoping pole, which you see behind me here, attaching that to the tongue of the trailer, and I was going to mount the external antenna onto the top of this telescoping pole, and then that way I can kind of raise and lower it when I'm using it, and I don't have to figure out a way to get it onto the fiberglass. I had to cut down this pole that I picked up at Home Depot. It was 50 bucks, but I cut the aluminum down with my hacksaw just to get it to the right size. And there was 3 sections that would go as like a 24-foot telescoping pole. Didn't need that, but I removed one of those sections, attached the mounting hardware, and then what I did is I cut a little notch. If you see right here, I cut a notch, and that's going to be where the coaxial cable can kind of sneak into this hollow pole and run up to to the antenna. There's probably a million different ways you could attach this telescoping pole onto the Scamp. I'm going to use two different methods. Number one, I'm going to use an old lashing technique from my Boy Scout days. Number two, I'm going to use a fastener. First thing we have to do is a clove hitch. And I want to start as high as I can go, kind of start high and work my way down. So I'm going to do a clove hitch on the top. So now that I have that first clove hitch done, I'm just going to start wrapping these two poles together. The tighter it can be, the better, right? I don't want this thing moving at all. So making sure this is nice and tight is going to be key to keep this thing upright and keep it attached and keep it from bouncing down the highway. I want to do one more lashing down here at the bottom so this no longer becomes a point, right? So I can secure it in two spots. It's going to give it much more stability and prevent it from starting to tilt one way or the other. All right, so now that I've done both of these lashings, it's time to start to add kind of this mechanical fastener as well, just as a bit of a backup. I'm going to slide up and down easily, and that's going to cause a real big problem in how high I can get this external antenna. A really important part of this is kind of like a Loctite. You know, I'm going to be bouncing down the road for thousands of miles with this setup, and I want to make sure these bolts aren't coming loose on me. So I'm going to add a dab of Loctite here to the bolts to make sure they stay nice and tight throughout the entire trip. All right, so everything is lashed together. It's nice and tight. I feel confident that this is going to go flying off as we're driving around. So the next step is let's attach this external antenna onto the provided hardware that Weboost sent along with this. There's a few different elements that they sent along with this to figure out, you know, to help people figure out how to attach it. So this one, it's kind of a spring, you know, if it's hitting the wind, it does have some flexibility on it. And then you have this, it's kind of like side feed that kind of lets the cable come out on the side. So that's what I'm using here. There is another piece, it's kind of like this extender tube that goes between the antenna and this. I don't think I'm going to need it, mainly because I have this telescoping pole that we're going to use. I'm already attaching here. Throw the washer on, and then there is actually a right way and a wrong way. Of course, I just did it the wrong way. Throw the washer on, and then tighten the bolt. Now, I'm going to throw on some Loctite here as well, because this is a really pivotal connection to make sure that this thing doesn't go flying. So I'll make sure this is nice and tight. Now with that in place, I can start extending my pole and I can see that I have significant clearance to get this antenna as high as possible to pick up any signal that might be in the area and power my computer for work and my daughter's computer for school. So now for the fun part. We've got to poke a hole. Slight change of plans. The initial thought was to go through the floor and then out towards the pole. I don't like how that's looking, how that's lining up with the metal posts, with the turns that I need to be making with this coaxial cable. You're really not supposed to do any sharp turns with this stuff, and the last thing I want to do is get this all set up and then manage to break the coaxial cable, the little wire inside. So I am going through the fiberglass. Not really wanted to do, but I think I found a really perfect spot for this. So right now you're under, this is I think a plan 1 or whatever they call it, but I have bunk beds in the front. So right now you're sitting under the bunk beds. I'm going to drill straight out through that wall right behind the battery. So I think the battery case is going to provide some sort of protection paired with the whole protector that Weboost sends along. They've also given me this really neat whatever it's called. It's going to cut the hole the right size for the wire guide. So let's get to it. Oh, I don't like this. I really don't want to cut a hole in here, but I think this is the best way to do it. So here we go. All right, I think that worked. I didn't hit anything. It looks like it's where I want it to be. So let's grab this, the hole cover that Weboost gave us, and let's finish this hole up. There it is, right here. Big gaping hole in my Scamp. Ugh. But I'm actually pretty happy with the way it came out. So now what I'm gonna do is, here's the little piece that Weboost gave. It should fit because I used all the parts that Weboost provided. And this is where it goes. What I'm going to want to do is get some caulk, put it in the hole, and then place this in so I can make sure there's a really great seal. Okay, the issue now is these little screws not really strong enough to get through fiberglass, so I have to drill a pilot hole small enough that it doesn't just create a big gaping hole. That's the big scary hole that I was afraid to make, and now that it's done, not so scary. So now I think what I'm going to do is run the coaxial cable out the hole that we just made, and then I'm going to seal the heck out of it with silicone. I should have done this before I attached it to the Scamp. I pulled this out, ran the cable through, which is a good thing because now the sealing on this is much better than what I left it as. And because this is going to be kind of hidden away behind the battery, it doesn't have to be so pretty, because it's not. I've run this cable kind of underneath where the battery sits. It's going to be underneath the propane tanks, and then it's going to feed itself up here into our pole that I kind of cut that notch in. And now we are connected. So next we're going to go inside, attach the cable, kind of secure it so it's not floating loosely around, using the provided zip ties that Weboost gave us. And then we're going to plug it in and see if it works. I'm just going to kind of start zip tying it to the existing wire chase. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm going to zip tie it along the exterior. So I'm really, I've run this coaxial from the bench where the hot water heater is, under the sink, behind the fridge, through to this cabinet underneath the bunk. For those of you who have a bathroom, you might have to adjust this part a little bit, but find the best path for you to get the coax cable where you need it. So we're back where we started. I've cable tied, I zip tied everything to make sure it's nice and snug. Let me give you a pointer that I just learned the hard way. Make sure you have enough slack in the cable coming from the external antenna before you zip tie everything. I came up short, so I had to undo everything and redo it. So you got to skip all that. So now, here we have the receiver. And I'm going to find this. So this is the end of the coaxial cable that came from the exterior antenna. I'm just going to attach that here. Now in the manual it says finger tighten, so for all of you with really strong fingers, maybe that means just to take it real easy, don't go nuts. So get this attached. The other thing, the other piece, if you remember, the third piece is the internal antenna. The internal antenna looks like this, and it has this little coaxial connector. You can see that. So I've run another small coaxial cable that came with it. I've run it from, I'm kind of positioning this antenna, I'll show you in a little bit, positioning this up on some shelving that I put into on the kitchen area above the sink. So I'm going to put that up there, and then and I've run this cable down from there, and I'm going to now attach it to the top of the booster. This box also tells you, the top is for the inside antenna, the bottom is for the outside antenna. The last thing, power. Now, as I told you, I plugged this in down next to the hot water heater. Plugged in from there. Here we go. Going to add the power, and lo and behold, we've got green lights. We've got green lights, folks. This is good news. Really good news. Yes, we have power, folks. So now I'm going to attach this into its little Velcro spot underneath here. It looks good, works. I'll clean up those cables, make sure they're nice and tidy. And now I'm going to attach this. You can see the cable comes down from here, down in here. I'll definitely get that cleaned up eventually. But now we're all connected. The green light is on. Everything looks good. We've got a working boost system. One quick note on the power supply for this. So you have an AC adapter that comes with the unit as well as a DC adapter. So in the future, while I'm using the AC adapter to plug into the outlet that's down there, eventually I'm going to connect this to the 12 volt, the DC power supply here in the Scamp. That way I'll be able to run this off of my battery and also add a switch. So I want to make sure I'm not draining the battery unnecessarily. That's it. We just finished installing the Weboost Drive RV system in our 13-foot Scamp, and we are ready to hit the road. And I'm so excited that I get to go out, hit the road, knowing that I can still stay connected. I can do the conference calls that I have to do at work. My daughter can do her schoolwork, her remote schoolwork, and we can still have a lot of fun while doing what we have to do. So thanks so much for hanging in there, checking this out, and I'll see you next time.